Hello, everyone. My name is Kenneth Morrison. I'm an instructor here at UCF. For those of you who don't know, I was an animator in the game industry before I made my way over to UCF. I was at Blind Squirrel Games working on a lot of contract work or being subcontracted by other people to do so. Probably my biggest feather in my cap was working on New World, subcontracting stuff from Amazon Games. So we're going to talk about animation pipelines today, which is a very big thing that not a lot of people really know about until they start doing it and realize they don't know what's happening. So let's start. And okay, so why animation? Animation is the act of creating emotion out of something that cannot move, still images, clay figures, ink and paint, pixels and polygons in our case. So games, animation pulls a lot of duties. It breathes life into characters. It sort of creates the designs that we are working with, that we are trying to make look good. A lot of that is sold through animation. Ooh. Oh, geez. Yep. And we're going to just go over here because I know that this is going to work. So, how animation? Talk about why. Why is good? How do we do it? That's the big number one question about animation. So, according to the dictionary, a production pipeline is a series of development and preparation or production stuff. So there's going to be individual parts of a pipeline that you have to do. You have to do A to get to B. You have to do C to get to D. And you need to use B in order to get to C. All that jazz. This whole little thing, this whole image is a nice oversimplification of what a pipeline is for most of the game industry or most of 3D production, but animation is just in the part that I circled and highlighted, and I X'd out modeling and texturing because that's not animation. So let's get down to it. So what is the animation pipeline? Okay, you lay things out, you research and develop, you don't model and texture, that's not us. You do rigging and setup, then you start animating, then you do VFX, and then you implement it into the engine. It's all nice and simple. Seems to be. These seems to be nice little tasks on the list of whatever game you're making. Now, back in the day, a lot of animation was all of this. This was all animation. However, as the game industry developed, as animation as an art form developed in the 3D world, all of these went from being one job to a department, and each task became a job in and of itself. You now have rigging artists. You now have animators who are just animating, and you have VFX people who are just doing VFX. And you even have people who are just doing layouts. It's a lot, so each one has their own little thing going on. But every time I'm asked a question about animation, it's like, hey, I want to do animation. How do I make a pipeline? I come back with questions of my own. And it's often questions that haven't been asked in whatever y'all are asking me about, whatever project you're all doing. So much of the pipeline is going to be learning what questions to ask and finding the answers to it. The main ones I have is, what do you want out of your animation pipeline? And what do you have? What do you have could be tools and technology, like, oh, we have the mocap space. Oh, we have access to Motion Builder. Oh, we are using Unreal. But often it's like, okay, what do you have could be who? Do you have an animator? Do you have a dedicated rigger? Do you have someone who's simply animation curious and wants to know about it? I see some smiles. I see some people getting called out. It's one of those things. What tools are you using? Again, are you using motion capture or not? Do you have someone who can rig or not? Are you using Maya? Are you using Blender? What are you using? Which engine? And what game are you trying to make? That is the biggest question that you have to ask. And sometimes the answer to that question changes drastically. So what do you have? Talking about an animator. You have an animator on your team. They're the people that make things move. They're what this is about. This entire presentation is to get animation to animate. Do you have some layout people? Now, layout is a term from traditional animation. That's a department in a lot of film and TV pipelines. You'll have someone who's just making sure everything's laid out well and where this character is and where that character is, where the camera is going to be. That could be an animator's job. Sometimes that's what an LD is doing. If you are a designer or you have a very design-heavy team, you probably have some secret animators who don't even know that they're animating. It's weird. VFX. VFX is creating the elements that support animation, that support the layout, that support everything. For example, in this situation, we're in this auditorium, this little hall, the VFX artist might be working on the light. They might be working on the little dust inside the sunbeams from the projector. They might be working on, I don't know, any dust particles that happen when I land somewhere, maybe a little speed line when I move my hand a little too quickly. All of that. Rigging TA. Now, TA stands for Technical Artists. And I remember, this was like, God, this was 6 years ago now, but when I was in grad school, I was learning from a technical artist, and the first question I asked him, how long has tech art been a term? And he said, about 5 to 10 years. So technical art is something, again, a department that has been created because it got too complex. And we have rigging TAs and pipeline TAs, two different departments, two different types of technical artists. Rigging TAs are the people that make the characters usable for our production, for our game. They are the things, they're the people that will make the animation able to be doing its job. Pipeline, they're going to be making sure everything gets into the game, making sure that everything works through there and it actually is in the game and it looks good. There's a whole lot of people involved in a pipeline. And if you notice, only one of them is actually called the animator. So, hey, we only have one animator. It's like, well, you might have some people who can support your animator. You'll be fine, as long as you kind of know what you're doing, or at least work with intention. But what do you want? What do you want? This is very important because it could be what type of game is being made, but also what genre, what medium, what perspective, what the gameplay is, what the art style is. This is the main thing we are going to be talking about. I need to know what you want. Because if you come to me and it's like, hey, we're going to try to make an animation pipeline, and I'm going to have a different answer if it's going to be a platformer versus a first-person shooter versus a narrative visual novel type something. So let's talk about mediums. When we're talking about mediums, there's a lot of different ways this could be. When we're talking about video games, it could be 2D versus 3D, different types of 2D versus different types of 3D. For our purposes, there are essentially four. We have keyframe, we have rigged 2D, we have pixel art, and we have motion capture. And I have all these fighting games that have different, essentially, pipelines because that's the medium of choice. Each medium will have a lot of knock-on effects on the pipeline. Massive knock-on effects. Everything you'll do will have knock-on effects in the pipeline, but this is where we're going to kind of start. 3D. I have this nice little GDC talk. In this whole presentation is going to be disseminated. You can just get the PowerPoint, so you can go through a lot of these videos later on. 3D animation can be divided into two types: keyframe animation and motion capture. Motion capture, I'm sure y'all have heard of this before. I'm sure y'all have seen this. Some of you probably have worked with it yourself. The dude in the suit with all the little dots on him dancing around, and then you see the character doing the same dance. That's motion capture. They essentially take the motion data, they're tracking whoever's in the suit, and they're like assigning every limb to a different bone and saying like, okay, this is going to be the animation, and then that's given to an animator to clean up and use. Keyframe animation, it's all made from scratch. You get the character, and then you make each movement possible, bit by bit, piece by piece, limb by limb. That sounds daunting, kind of is. Animation is daunting. But creating it from scratch, you gain a lot of control. Doing it with motion capture, you're doing a lot of editing. It's all animation, but they fire different parts of your brain, and they have different aspects to the pipeline. All right. Keyframe, or hand-keyed. Its terminology is kind of weird in the game industry. But keyframe animation allows for control and flexibility in the final product. There is nothing off limits. You can do pretty much anything because you're making it from scratch. There's no character type, no body proportion, no something about the animation that you can't do because you can all just do it in keyframe. This is a keyframed shot that I made, little fan art of Samus from Metroid. It's all cool. Even in motion capture heavy pipelines, you're still doing keyframe animation. You're still doing things keyed by hand because there's going to be some things that you just aren't going to be able to get in motion capture, and you're going to be doing it in hand keyed. When I was at Blind Squirrel, I was working on Delta Force Hawk Ops, which is now on Steam. I can talk about it. There was all of the actions that everyone was doing, and we had characters doing all their stuff. The hands in first person, all hand keyed. You're not going to really motion capture first person animations. You could a little bit, but it's just easier to do it from scratch by hand. All right. And even then, sometimes you're going to get a suite of mocap data, and it's just not going to work. It's like, hey, we tried this in motion capture. It's not going to work. Or we missed one. That was a big one. That was fun. That was really fun when that happened. It wasn't fun. But motion capture is a powerful tool that will quickly create lifelike and naturalistic animation. This is a motion capture piece that I did myself, just to kind of prove that I can do it. Both of these are like 6-year-old pieces that I did. So you have the raw data here, and then you have the actual animation here. I'm just gonna click that here. Motion capture does not replace animators. I want to make that very clear. I want to underline that. But it will automate the process. It will probably cut down 30% of the work you'd be doing as an animator, which can be a production boom. Because, hey, you just automated 30% of the process for one person on one project. It's not that much. You automate the process by 30% for a dozen people on a project, and they have 2 years of animation to go through. That's a lot, isn't it? Economy of scale happens. Many AAA companies like EA build their entire animation pipeline about motion capture. If you are trying to be an animator in the game industry, get in that motion capture space, get in the suit, start screwing around, and start to figure out what you can do. You will have to use motion capture. I remember somebody thumbed their nose at motion capture, and then he did it for like one little bit, one little thing because he had to, because it was assigned, and that got him his job, doing a lot of motion capture. When we're talking about motion capture, didn't really call this out last slide, but hey, you have Maya. Maya can do it with a workflow called Human IK. That is a specific tool within Maya. And then there's a new thing called Motion Builder. Well, it's not really new. It's very, very old, very, very crusty, but I love it. It is purpose-built for animation. Purpose-built. It's great. So again, if you want to be an animator in the game industry, you might want to test that out. You might want to try something. Okay, let's go. 2D. I'm going to have this nice little GDC talk about how 2D animation works. Much like 3D, we can break it up into 2 different types of animation. Sprite-based. I'm sure all of you all know sprites coming into the game industry and all that. You probably saw a lot of people make fun stuff with sprites where, again, each animation is created from scratch. But you create individual frames of an animation, and then you essentially compile those frames in a specific way. For example, if you have a running animation, or you'll have 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot passing, 1 foot landing on the ground, and you just kind of play those in a sequence, and everything looks good. Puppet animation is a little bit different. It's very similar to just 3D rigging, but in 2D. You create a character, you create a drawing or a series of drawings with a skeleton in mind. You'll split it up and you'll make sure everything works with that. And then you can, instead of having to draw the character every single time for every new frame from scratch, like with sprites, you can just puppet it. You can hand the character to a new person and they can get rocking and rolling. Sprite animation, yeah. Create a little texture sheet that has all the frames on it. I'm just gonna click this.
Hey everyone, and
nope. Hey everyone, nope. But again, you create the texture sheet that has all of the frames you want, and then you just play through it in a timeline, and you can hold on 1 frame. You can make 1 frame go really quickly. You can do whatever you want. You can have nice, fun smear frames if you so desire. This is the closest to traditional 2D animation. Old school, Mickey Mouse, all Looney Tunes stuff. There's a lot of different things you can use for it. There is Spine. Has anyone heard of Spine? Spine 2D. A few people have heard of it. It is a purpose-built 2D animation tool for games. I don't think we have it on the PCs here, but it is something to look into. There's also a Sprite. A Sprite is like 20 bucks. You can get it on Steam. It's really nice, really fun. It's really good, has a lot of good animation tools, but it's very style limited. It's for pixel art. It's one of those things. And then we have Adobe. Pros and cons, it's Adobe. You have opinions, I do. Puppet animation. This is a sample of a lot of puppet animation from the video game Teppen. Again, very similar to rigging, where you create a drawing or a series of drawings with skeletons in mind. It may seem very stiff and not that good in comparison to traditional 2D animation, or at least in terms of like the actual motion. You can get really high fidelity with puppet animation because you can make those drawings as high fidelity as you want. The ones in this video, they look like paintings. They look gorgeous, but you're only going to see them from one angle, and they may not move all that much. And if they're going to move very predictably. It's very easy to see the seams. One of the things that puppet animation does really, really well is it works really well on phones. Who here has ever devved on a mobile game? I'm seeing people try to raise their hand and they're like, did I? I don't know. Mobile is actually a good avenue to go into for game development. There's a lot of money in mobile games. That means a lot of jobs. That means a lot of experience. Don't thumb your nose at it. But yeah, puppet animation is often a good thing to do for that. Oh, hold on. I do note here that, hey, Spine 2D, also good for Puppet, purpose-built for 2D animation. Blender and Maya actually do have 2D animation capabilities. Blender with its grease pencil, which is actually incredibly cool. It's just cool. For those who've had me before, you know I have a bias against Blender for a lot of weird psycho reasons, but that's on me. But the grease pencil in Blender is actually really stellar. For Maya, there's a lot of people who do a lot of really cool 2D animation in Maya, including Matt Stone and Trey Parker, creators of South Park. That's all in Maya. The quote is that it's like they're using a bulldozer to make a sandcastle. Hey, those episodes take like 5 days to make. They're using the top of the line stuff that they got. All right. A note on 2D. So, when you are creating 2D animation, it is important to realize how it is created. Rigs are created from drawing with layers and a special attention created to hiding seams. You see this Rapunzel. Like, you're not seeing all of her leg, but we have like half of her leg. You're seeing the little nubs from where her elbow and her or just her elbows will meet for their lower and upper arm. They're the same color, so they'll blend into each other. Again, sprite sheets are created with drawing a sequence of drawings. This major has a lot of stuff for a lot of things, not for 2D, unfortunately. If you are a 2D artist, you're going to have to do a lot of self-development. You're going to have to look at outside resources. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean 2D art does not have a place in the games y'all are making. Does not mean it doesn't have a place in AAA game development. VFX is often a place where a lot of 2D artists find themselves, especially ones who are very animation curious. UI is another place that they find themselves. If you just want to get into 2D and you just want to draw pretty pictures for games, sorry, not going to work for you. But if you can make pretty pictures and you can integrate them into a pipeline for animation or for VFX and UI, and you can hook things up behind the scenes with those local and global variables and pass them around, that's really nice. All right. Also, a note on engines. Unity and Unreal, it's the big rivalry. There's a lot of people here who literally wear their Unreal fanboyism on their sleeve. This is a shirt I got at Unreal Fest. That wasn't planned. That's just a happy accident. But which one's better? Which one's better for what? And it all depends on the project you're doing. It all depends. Again, which one's better? Question, what are you trying to do? It's the theme here. Unreal has some 2D animation tools, and they're getting better. Unity's tools are more mature, and there's some stuff that is purpose-built for 2D. If you are trying to do a 2D game, I suggest using Unity. Unreal has a lot of really good purpose-built 3D tools. You have MetaHuman, you have the control rig. The MetaHuman specifically is developing very rapidly. One tool is not better than the other. They all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses, and you have to understand what those are when you're doing a production. If you come to me with a 2D game that you're making in Unreal because you're just more comfortable in Unreal, I will straight up look at you and ask you, what are you doing and why are you doing that? And if you're just gonna stutter, I'm gonna just kind of chuckle to myself a little bit because I warned you. That has happened before, by the by.
in this video,
But this video is a lot of 2D stuff for Unity to get you down the rabbit hole. Here's a lot of 2D or MetaHuman stuff to get you down the rabbit hole if you're coming to this presentation later on. All right, animation software. Again, just kind of talking a little bit about them. Maya, good for animation and rigging. Just good for it. Motion Builder, motion capture specific. You can do some stuff, but it's better for just editing motion capture data. Blender, where are my Blender people at? Woo! Blender sucks for animation. It's just dog water. It really is. It's really not great when you're doing animation to the level of what you can get in Maya. And more importantly, it's actually really hard to go from Blender to Engine. Maya has a lot of just straight up buttons that are in there off rip to get anything from Maya to Unity or Unreal. Blender is good for some stuff, but if you're gonna go full on animation, you might want to look at Maya or Motion Builder, straight up. Also for rigging, Blender is strange. Blender is very strange. I don't fully understand it in terms of its rigging. Spine, again, purpose-built for 2D animation. Sprite, pixel art focus, can do a lot of animation. And there's also new things coming out trying to find their own little niche. I have Cascader, I'm not really sure how you pronounce it. It is a newer animation system. It's trying to do a lot of kind of machine learning ways to blend stuff. It looks really, really cool, but as soon as you get out of humanoids, it starts to fall apart. And that's one of those things where it's like you have to figure out what you're trying to do. If you're gonna make a game about, I don't know, a dog trying to survive the wilderness and you're using Cascadeur, it's probably not gonna be the best thing to do. Mediums, again, going back, wrapping a little bow on the medium talk. We have decided what medium we're doing. You come to me and it's like, hey, we're gonna do an animation pipeline. We need your help. It's like, okay, what are you doing? We're gonna be using motion capture 3D. Great. Do you have a rig? Do you have someone to make a rig? And the answer is no. Well, we're gonna need to stop there, and we're gonna have to figure that out. Rigging. Rigging is the discipline of making something able to be moved and manipulated. Rigging is a lot. So in games, much of rigging is setting up characters as a quote unquote skeletal mesh. And that's made up of a skeleton, skinning, and controllers. So these are going to be like our main things that we're going to be talking about. So what is the skeleton? What is the character model? What is the skin? What are the controllers? Essentially, it's very complex, very hard to move a character vertice by vertice. You have the character model. You need to move the arm. Okay, we're going to select every polygon on the arm and move it, and then we're going to clean up that movement. That sucks. We're not doing that. So what you do is you get this skeleton. And instead of moving every vert on the model, you assign a bunch of verts, a bunch of polygons to a bone, and then you just move that bone instead. Now, you have the bones driving the model, but a lot of bones have issues with moving. There's a lot of very distinct things that you're not going to really understand until you start doing it, and you're like, why is that stupid? And the answer is for very complex and very good reasons. So we're going to cheat that by making a set of controllers and constraints. These little shapes around this model, those are controllers. And those essentially tell the bones what to do. We have the skin, we have the bones. Think of controllers like the muscles. You kind of constrain them onto each controller, onto each bone. So it's like, hey, when I move this controller, I want this bone to move like this. That's the sort of chain of influence. It's something that is kind of hard to wrap your head around when you're first learning it, but as soon as you start to get into it, it makes perfect sense. But you have to sort of mind meld with that workflow. It can get really, really cool. So when we are rigging, or not rigging, when we're animating, the only thing we really care about is getting all that animation data onto the character's skeleton that is skinned to the mesh. You might have some constraints doing something. You might have multiple bones that are just there to influence other bones or something. But the main skeleton that is on the mesh, parented there, is the one that we care about. And that can lead to some interesting stuff with how everything's set up. There is this link here to something called Bondle, which is the League of Legends Wordle, where they give you a skeleton of a character and an animation, and they have you guess which character it is. This one is Callista. I don't really know or care if all of you play League of Legends, but it is good to look at this because you can see here that they have a skeleton on this this little part of her skirt that's flowing. They have a skeleton inside of this plume on her helmet because they have to move. They have a lot of bones and joints in her hands because her hands are very important to her design, but they don't really have all that much going on in her feet because not as much. They don't even have anything going on with her face here. The thing about rigging in skeletons, if something's going to move, it needs a joint, it needs a bone. And you all need to bake that onto the skeleton that you're putting into Engine. Oh yeah, no. If the animation is not on the skeleton, or worse, the skeleton is not complete, it just won't work. And that comes from people who are doing a lot of shape key nonsense on a mesh and then threw it into Engine. It's like, what's happening? It's like, it's not on skeleton, man. It's not going to work. Sorry. Rigging, clothing, and extra stuff. Kind of like what I was talking about with the League of Legends example. If you look here on the Hotel Transylvania, there's all these little things on Dracula. That's all on Dracula's cape. That's all the little points that the cape can move. It has a lot of them. You see, I think it's Jeff. It's been a while since I've watched Hotel Transylvania. His hair has some controllers. His hair has joints. His hair has bones in it. They're rigged. They can move. If you want something to move, it has to have a joint. It has to be rigged up. You also have these characters with their clothing. You have a skirt. You have a jacket. This character's skirt, her leg is going straight through it because there's no animation, there's no rig in that skirt. We have to add it. We have to add it in order to make it work, like this jacket. Skirts and jackets and hair and capes and anything flowing, you're going to need a lot of joints. The more joints, the better. The more finer details that you can get in deformation. I'm sure you've seen those videos of someone dropping a plane of a bunch of faces onto an object, and the more faces it has, the more it deforms. It starts off with like 4, and it just kind of like bends in 2 places. It's not great. But when you get to like a dozen subdivisions, it looks amazing. That's also too much. If you have all this flow and you want to animate all that flow, good luck. A lot of things that happen when you're doing that is you just put that into the engine and you automate it procedurally. We'll talk about that later on in this presentation. Props. So, if you're making a character's props, like a weapon, like just a phone, like a bag or something, that also has to be rigged in a way. Oftentimes, it's something called a socket joint, or at least in Unreal, it's called a socket joint. I don't know what it is in Unity, where you essentially just say, hey, I want this to be where the prop is going to pivot, where it's going to move from. This little point on the thing. Like in a backpack, it's going to be on the strap. On this little pointer that I have that controls the presentation, it's going to be down here where my hand is. And it's going to be socketed to another joint in my hand that is specifically for props. Now, if your prop is just kind of whatever, like an axe, like in this example, you don't need to have all that much rigging going on. But if it's something like a gun, you can see in this slide, the gun has controllers on it because there's a lot of things that the guns need to do. You need to take out the magazine to reload it. You need to be able to pull the trigger. You need to be able to maybe like pull a slide, what have you. You can have props be rigged and have its own animation. If you are going to do something like that, you will essentially animate the prop alongside the animation of somebody using a prop, export those separately, and then put them back together in the engine. On a lot of those things about rigging, it's also pretty good for something like VFX or design elements. For example, with the gun, a lot of gun props have a joint right next to the muzzle or in the muzzle because, hey, we need a muzzle flash because it's going to spawn a projectile from somewhere on the gun. Hey, that joint right there. Makes it very easy to design from. Something like an axe. You want a nice motion trail coming from the blade. Put a joint by the blade so we know where to put the motion trail via effect. But in an engine, if you just kind of want to let it rock and you do the socket joint, here is a lot of the channel box in engine. It's just the bone for the axe is just taking in all the data from the hands, and it's just letting it rock. There's a lot of things you're going to be doing in animation in the pipeline is just let the engine handle it, and it's fine. However, understanding how that works and how to set that up is the problem, and every project is going to have a different way to do it. So, I'm thinking about rigging in production. Again, we're talking about bones and skin and controllers and all of that. And I'm sure you kind of hear in some of the language that I'm saying. It's like, hey, rigging is difficult, because it is. It's also a massive production bottleneck. So if you're a producer, you need to really understand what's happening with the rigging, because that will make your animators' lives a living hell if they don't have a rig. It'll make your character artists a living hell if their character can't be rigged. You need to know. There's a couple of things that I call points of no return, where, hey, we need you to edit something deep within this character. And the answer is everything after that point in the pipeline to making this rig is going to be deleted, because I'm going to have to do it all again. So hopefully you get it right the first time. It's not great. A couple of points on that is joint hierarchy and placement. Essentially, hey, if you make an arm and you misplace the elbow and you just need to move it, you need to move the elbow up or down a little bit on the arm. That's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot more than you think. Character topology and proportions. So again, we're trying to move the model, and we use it by parenting the skeleton to the model and all that. Hey, we need to change that parenting and all the deformation that's going on with that. That's too much. Big sorry, we're not doing that. You might as well just start again. Yeah, binding the model to the skeleton, similar stuff. Adding controls to the rig. So there's a lot of stuff that is set up, and it's like, hey, we want you to add this. We want you to move that around. We want you to add this functionality. It's like, should have known that before I did this. We're going to have to completely remake the rig for us to add FK or IK to the legs. It's like, yeah, stuff like that. A lot of production bottlenecks going on with rigging, so you got to make sure it all kind of works. There's some times where this is actually pretty okay, where this is fine. Say you're adding something. You have a character and you want to add a little cape. You're just adding something. You're adding some functionality. That's okay. Changing functionality, deleting functionality, not okay. It's not like adding length to an arm. No, we're not doing that. Maybe add a little something to the arm, like a sword, maybe a little gauntlet. Maybe we can do something like that. Maybe. There's a lot of maybes in that. A lot of stuff like this, kind of how you have modular characters, where you'll have a character who's bald, and then you can put different hairstyles on them. You make the character bald, so you can add hairstyles in post. You have a character without a cape, so you can add capes to it. All that little fun stuff. Proxy rigging. All right, so production bottleneck, a lot of trepidation going on in that. It's actually fine to start when everything's not finished, as long as you're using a proxy. So, say you have your character model, your character modeler say, hey, this is going to be the final proportions of our character. This is how long his arms are going to be. This is how long the upper arm is in relation to the forearm, in relation to the hand. This is how big their head is. That's not going to change. Here is something for you to work with while I go and finish the model. Me as a rigger, I can work with that. I can work with that all day. I can go in and start my joint placement, start building my hierarchy, start building my basic functionality with the intention of getting the final model so I can just swap it out and say, hey, now we can make this work. The entire rig's set up. I'm not going to change where my joints are. I'm just going to change what they're attached to. We're solid. We're good. That's awesome. You can just use Manny for this. You can literally just use Manny for this if need be, if you want a character to have Manny's proportions. At the end of the day, we just care about the animation data on the skinned bones. As long as we're working with that, we're solid. Some of this stuff, I will say, you can look at the proxy rig, and there's some, and then the final Deadpool, there's some like other stuff going on, so there's some controllers. That's only going to work on the final model. If you know where that's where you're at in the pipeline, that's okay. But again, you can build up the main proxy stuff. You can pass this off to the animator. They can get started, and then at some point, all right, we have the final one. Here you go. We're cooking. You want everyone to be working on something. If someone's blocked by something, you need to figure out a way to alleviate that so people can get working. All right, let's talk about character proportions again. It's like, hey, you can just use Manny. Hey, we're going to be using humans. We'll just use a human character proportions. Sometimes that's not always the accurate thing to do, because there's a lot of things about art style questions that will change the proportions of the character, will create rigging and animation consequences all the way down. You can see this in both of these. You can see this with both of these Captain Americas. They're Captain America. They have human proportions, but the more stylized proportions, broader shoulders, longer legs on the Marvel Rivals Captain America, and then more naturalistic looking proportions on the Crystal Dynamics Avengers game, Captain America. That's something that you need to know. That's something that you need to get down. How long are these legs? How tall is this character? That will cause problems in the future if you don't understand what's happening. Even then, a lot of humans have very distinct proportions. There are people who are taller than me, people who I'm wider than on the shoulders, people who are like slimmer than me. I will not move the same way as they will. They will not move the same way that I will. That's going to cause issues if you don't get that working. You want to keep your proportions pretty consistent. This holds true with Mixamo and motion capture. Now, Mixamo and motion capture, you can essentially just put animation data from one thing, maybe from your motion capture shoot, and then paste it on to a new character. That's great. That makes it really, really nice and easy to do animations with. But it needs to be set up for that. A lot of auto rigging, a lot of animation pipelines have well-worn stuff, but they need to have this sort of setup. This is the human IK setup. You need to essentially say, hey, this bone is that bone, because one thing we'll call the hip bone, like the upper leg, they'll call it the upper leg. Someone will call it leg 1. Someone will call it the femur. Someone will call the joint for the hand. Others will call it the wrist. They don't know. You have to make sure it all kind of lines up, but as long as they're kind of there, it's good. You need to keep these sort of bones in there. Mixamo has it differently than Unreal. Unreal has it differently from Maya and Motion Builder's Human IK system. It's kind of just a pain in the ass you're going to have to deal with. But the setup, though, you can just use them all together, and you can just pump out human characters in humanoid animations as long as they're going. It's really, really good. Skeletons created for and with these tools do have a degree of flexibility. Things can be added, but not changed or removed. If you kind of go into a lot of Mixamo characters, you'll find people with like dresses and jackets and capes and long hair. You can essentially add that stuff to a motion captured character. You can add that to a human IK skeleton, but you can't remove someone's arm. It's one of those things. Again, just use Manny. It's kind of might be hard to see in the presentation here, but this is the default human IK skeleton, and this is the default Unreal Mannequin skeleton. Despite the poses being slightly different and there being some joints there for IK and sockets and all of that, still very similar in construction. They have like 3 joints for the spine. They have 2 bones for the leg. You can literally take this skeleton tweak its proportions, create a little proxy character model, and then start going to town. In fact, if you do that and you're using Unreal, so many automatic animation processes that exist in Unreal will be at your disposal. It's really nice. Please just use Manny's stuff. It's really good. Unless you're not doing a humanoid, which is also really cool in some ways. But you also have to keep perspective in mind. So, when setting up a character and the perspective and all of that, that's going to influence the setup. So, this example, if anyone's played Kingdom Hearts 1, you fight the demon from the end of Fantasia on top of his mountain, and he's in his mountain, and he's looking all badass. You don't see him move around a lot because he doesn't have to. He's just in his mountain. He don't need no legs. So if you're going to create something and it's just going to be used for that, you don't need to make the whole thing. You just need to make that. There is a whole thing that I did was on my my capstone project for Faya. It's Wick/Flicker of Hope, where we had an arm coming out to grab our main character. It's literally just an arm. No body, no torso, no legs, no nothing. Just an arm. And it works. That's all you need. But yeah. This also brings us to perspective. Because again, perspective is very important for what you're setting up. Game genre and game design is very, very, very tied to the perspective. There's first-person shooters and third-person shooters. There's side-scrolling beat-em-ups, and then there's top-down beat-em-ups. All of that. And people will start to get little out of sorts if you call one thing something, not others, because I don't know. People like to argue for some reason. So a lot of your designs are defined by your camera. So is your animation. All animation is done to camera. It needs to look good to camera. If you go from third-person free control to over-the-shoulder third-person, it's going to look very different. If you go from top-down to side-scroller, the way I'm animating it is going to be different. There's a lot of things happening. You have to find the right perspective that will define your art and animation pipeline. Keep this adage in mind. What the player doesn't see won't hurt them. So, first person. This is the default Unreal first-person rig. It is a pair of arms on a camera. And that's fine. You have this nice little shot from Encanto. In order to get that shot, they needed to do some stuff. There's a lot of really fun stuff when you start to look at sort of behind the scenes or behind the camera things in animation. Like I think it's from what's the fish Pixar movie? Not Finding Nemo? Not Moana. The one in Italy. I can't remember. Yeah, Luca. There's like a scene of the character taking a bite from a piece of food, and like his entire mouth is taken up his head. If you look behind, there's so much bad stuff going on behind his head. Like his teeth is coming out of his skin. It's weird, but you're not seeing it, so it's fine. It's fine. Abandon what is real and do what you need for the shot is a piece of advice. Always to camera. Don't worry about it. It's not there. But this does have a lot of rigging and animation knock-on effects. You need to build a lot of that functionality into a rig. You need to do a lot of stuff in that animation. Again, most animation tends to break when it's viewed outside of its context, like viewed from a different angle or slowed down. I'm sure everyone has like seen those, oh, look at this weird frame from Disney. They don't animate it that well, and it's like a quarter of a second of animation, and it doesn't look any bad when you actually see it in the full context. But people like to show it. So you'll have player control cameras where the player can control everything and they can find any angle they want. That creates a hell on production because everything needs to look good from every angle. And if it doesn't look good from any angle, it's going to be like, I don't like that. But if you go fixed camera in either gameplay or cinematic, you can create a lot more designed and directed gameplay and moments in animation. This is from Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds on the 3DS. It looks really cool up here. How did they get it to look like that? They rendered, they kind of essentially made everything at like a 45-degree angle. So if you actually look at it, everyone's just like, it's weird. But you're not going to see it from that, so who cares? Going back to that Bondle, that League of Legends animation viewer, where it's like, who's this character? There's a couple of them where it's a character set who's like, his chest is pointed to the air. He's looking down his chin at everyone because they want to get his face and his chest from that isometric angle. There's a lot of weird funkiness on the breathing because it needs to read from that angle. It's a thing you have to do. If you're going to make something from a fixed camera perspective, great. Start from there and don't lose it. But if you're going to do player control, it's going to be weird. Perspective and readability. It's not only like how much control the player has, but it's also like where the camera sort of is. There's an aspect of readability. This is from another presentation I did. I kind of just took this example. God of War, the old God of Wars on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, they kind of were further away from Kratos. Kratos was very small, so as a result, all of his motions had to be big. You go into the new God of Wars, also has some weird stuff going on with the camera. It's really cool. That's a big selling point. But it's more close in. It's behind Kratos' shoulder the entire time. And hey, maybe it might pull out to half the distance you'd usually see Kratos back in the older God of Wars, maybe. So you have to see more of what Kratos is doing, and he can have more fine, more like higher fidelity animations where you can kind of see each step that he's taking, see how he's like moving everything. More subtle animation because it's closer in. But all of these animations, no matter where they're at, they're trying to make a good silhouette. They're trying to find a good silhouette for each motion, for each action. That's what you need to do when you're making an animation, no matter where you are from that perspective. Again, further away, you might need bigger, more exaggerated actions. Closer in, more subtle things. And that can be a lot harder than bigger ones. It's one of those things like when you go from third person to first person in games, the animation tends to be a little more constrained and the fidelity of all the models becomes higher because you're looking from that in first person right in front of everyone. Okay, some examples of perspective trickery. I'm gonna let these play. This is from Guilty Gear, where it's done from a side-on perspective. Now, here it looks okay when we change it to see that side, but then it's like we're covering her face, we're covering her eyes. That doesn't look normal. It's because it's supposed to be seen from the side. Yeah, somebody's memeing it up because it's Guilty Gear. They can't help themselves. Breaking where the camera is, where the axis of the camera is, will cause that sort of weirdness. Now this is interesting because it's a first-person versus third-person comparison in GTA 5. Both perspectives are essentially playing the same quote-unquote animation, but it's changed if it's more first person or third person. In first person, the gun is being held up because the player needs to see the gun. But in third person, it's swinging down to his hip, up to his head, because it needs to be seen from third person. This is interesting. This is kind of a weird little quirk of first person gameplay, is that what the player is seeing in first person is not what actually is happening in the world. If you're seeing the animations from another perspective, another player is watching you from their first-person camera, they're seeing you as the third person, you're going to be playing a different set of animations. The sort of player entity in-game is playing both animations right on top of each other, but just what camera is seeing what is different. I do highly recommend seeing this video, because this will probably answer a lot of questions you'll have if you're making a first-person game. It's very, very, very cool. But yeah. And again, what the camera doesn't see, what the audience doesn't see, won't hurt them. Just fake it. There's so much about making a game, animation or otherwise, you are just faking it. And you need to learn what you're faking and how to fake it. So this is from Boundary Break. I talked about it in
Continue when he gets
slide. This is essentially what's happening in a cutscene and then what's happening elsewhere. Hey, they want all these really cool framings with the color, with all the VFX. Yeah, they're just putting the colored backgrounds and the white backgrounds behind everyone. They're putting the VFX right in front of the camera, and they're just cutting where they need to create the shot. They need to have this little tunnel, like VFX, these speed lines. Okay, how are we doing that? We're just going to put, where is it going to do it? Yeah, we're going to put a cylinder with the VFX on it just for this shot, and we're going to dim the lights to make it all look good. They're just faking it. Really stellar screen direction. This is the supers from Street Fighter, but without the cinematic camera, where you get to see up close and personal someone look like they're about to lose their lunch because Ryu punched him in the stomach. You see, hey, there's all this VFX going on. Oh, yeah, we're launching him up. We're going really high. I'm going to shoot him down, and then I'm just going to land immediately. You'll see in these sort of situations, people will just teleport all over the screen. Oh, I'm going to throw someone high in the air. They're going to go up the same bit of space 3 or 4 times, or down 3 or 4 times to make it all look cool. People are going to be disappearing and reappearing. VFX is going to cover everything up. You are going to literally use smoke and mirrors. If you're an animator and you want to do this kind of stuff, work with your VFX people. VFX people, if you want to do this kind of stuff, work with your animator, work with your layout level designers. There's going to be really cool stuff that happens with this. I definitely tried to find it, but I couldn't. It was an Overwatch example of how Reaper teleports. He'll like do his teleportation, they'll have the little smoke, and then he'll just go under the map. And then he'll reappear on top of the map. And it's like, ooh, I teleported. But literally it's like, no, you're just gonna go travel in the upside down or whatever. It's fun. It's really fun. A lot of that stuff has a lot of gameplay concerns. It wasn't just cinematic, it's also gameplay focused. So we were talking about, hey, how are we rigging this? What medium are we using? What is the gameplay? All of this has implications on our pipeline, because each gameplay will have a different pipeline to what we're going to be doing. A good animator can make anything if they know what to do. And by know what to do, I don't mean it's like, oh, I know how to animate. It's like, no, what do you want me to make? And when creating that pipeline, game design and animation need to be talking to each other constantly. Do not silo yourselves. Don't have the design department that's only doing design and the art department that's only doing art. That doesn't make for a good one. In AAA, where that's just the nature of the beast, because you're not going to be able to get 100 people in a room to make one thing, departments will have a mix. You will have, and like the combat team will have a mix of animators and game designers. A level design team will have environment artists and level designers. They're all going to be working with each other. You'll even have programmers in the mix because it's like, hey, I'll make that all work good for you and all that. Gameplay needs to be involved in the animation pipeline. And this is one of those things I say a lot in these presentations. It's not only an art issue, it's a design issue, and as a result, it's a production issue. Production needs to get involved. Best way to kind of, hey, what are we going to make? How are we going to make this? Make a prototype. Literally just make a prototype of whatever. It doesn't need to have high fidelity, because as you're going to make it, you're going to say, hey, we need this animator, we need that. All right, I'll make it. Hey, designer, I made this. Can we make it work in there? I think we can make it work. All of that. A lot of questions of how will this pipeline work will be answered if you just make a little prototype, a minimum viable product of what's happening. I like this video right here because, oh no, that's the full thing. No, I want just a clip. Oh geez. Oop, sorry. Okay. I like this clip because
it wasn't until 2018 that
how a sort of prototype should look animation-wise. Look at that character. That character is just blocks. That is a proxy rig with a proxy model. And if you look at the way he's jumping, hair goes up, hair goes down. That's his jump animation. Not much, but that's what is needed. It works. You don't need to make everything high fidelity on your first go. Okay, let's go back to slideshow.
Toys
for Bob, I don't care. A note on prototyping. So when you're planning everything, you are going to need to say like, hey, we want this type of animation. We want that type of animation. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to give it to you as an animator, and you're going to say, that's not what I wanted. Okay, what did you actually want? Draw it out, and we'll do it from here. So I'm going to waste maybe half an hour rather than half a day working on this thing that's going to be thrown out. I love this bit from a Sakurai video where he just kind of got out a toy and he posed it. And he's like, this is what I want the pose to be, and this is how long I want it to be. Cool. There's all these animations from Street Fighter. A lot of the concept artists, they'll literally draw out, hey, I'm thinking this pose. This is how the character might kick. And it's pretty much there, most of it. Little changes here and there, but it works. You can draw out the prototype animation. Even if it's a 3D animation, it'll be fine. And this is the Mortal Kombat fatality storyboards. Sticks, stick figures. If you kind of stay in the prototype phase of everything, you can do all of this very, very cheaply. And again, not have to burn so much time and effort. Yeah, this is that Sakurai video I was talking about, where he's going in and trying to figure out all the animations. And he's literally just taking a picture of his little toys. He's playing with toys to make it all work. And it works. I understand exactly what he's trying to convey. I can take it from there. Another way is to get a camera.
Disney animators have
and film yourself. Film reference. Please use reference. If you bring me an animation, it's like, hey, I'm trying to do an animation, it's not looking right. And then I'm like, okay, what were you trying to do? It's like, I'm trying to do a little this like that. And like, can you show me? Do you have reference? I'm gonna ask for your reference because I'm gonna need to judge it against something. Again, how do I make an animation pipeline? What do I do? That's a question, and I'm gonna respond with another question. You use reference, you make a prototype, it'll solve a lot of those problems. It'll answer a lot of the questions that you have. Please, for the love of God, use reference. It's like, I can tell when somebody doesn't use reference. It's crazy. Yeah, this is one thing. If the design isn't clear, then the animation won't be clear. And if the animation is out of scope, the design is out of scope. That's just a thing that all producers and all animators and all designers need to internalize. Everyone else has the keys to your kingdom, unfortunately. You can't do it all. You have to rely on somebody else. Sorry. So, just have this on there. So we've made our prototype. We've got our reference. We are going to create an asset list. As we're making our game, as we've created our prototype, we're in pre-production, we're out of pre-production. It's like, hey, we're going to do this design, we're going to make this mechanic, we need these animations. And then we need these animations. That animation is going to need these parameters, these things. That is something you're going to need to do for your animation pipeline. That is something that usually a producer keeps track of. This can usually be made with or alongside the GDD. It could be in there, it could be not, depending on how your team's production works. But you want to keep track of what you have to do. And it should be living, because somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to cut this. And it's like, all right, we're going to wipe these assets off the list. Or, hey, we're modifying this mechanic. That's going to be a new thing for the animations. We're going to make more assets lists. That's how this works. When you're doing that, you will create a list of parameters. So, hey, we're going to have the character walk. I have some questions. How fast is that walk? What are the animations that it's going to go in with? How are they work with the environment? Are they going to walk into something? Are they going to go from another action into a walk? Can they jump out of this walk? Can they swim into this walk? I don't know. Am I gonna have to make a rough terrain walk? All these things. Again, parameters are not just an animation issue, it's a design issue, and because it's a design issue, it's all the way down, it's a production issue. I like this video, even though I think it's for like level design, is because it's very, very much going in and trying to think of what each parameter is. Hey, we need a walking animation or a crouch walk animation. Okay, how tall does it have to be? Where does it have to fit? We need a climbing animation. Okay, how are they going to climb? How tall is the climb going to be? All these sort of things. They need to walk through a door. The door needs to be this big. Sort of, that sort of stuff. Those are the little parameters. Those are going to be the little variables that you're going to put into your asset list. I do remember when there was somebody coming to me for issues with their workshop project. It's like, okay, I need to make this climb. All right, how fast is the climb? I don't know. And then I just looked at them and said, you have to go to your designer and get an answer for that before I help you with this. Because a fast climb is going to be different from a slow climb. And then he made a fast climb, and it's like, that's too fast. Okay, the design of the climb has to change now. That's something that will happen constantly. But how do they flow together? This is a state machine. State machines or an animator, depending on the engine. The way that this works is that when you have a character, like the asset of a character in your engine, moving throughout the environment, moving throughout your game, they have a state. That state could be like right now, I'm not moving, I'm idle. I'm walking, I'm in a walking state. That's a part of a moving state. If I speed up, my walking state becomes a running state. Each state and the transitions between those states and certain aspects of those states have an animation assigned to them. It's funky. It's a weird way to start thinking about how your design works, how character animation works, but that's what happens. And a lot of these things, you'll have an asset list of like, oh, we have 100 animations to go with. Oh, this is so much. And then you realize, oh, this is like a half-second run. This is a quarter of a second going from run to not running. This is a jump, but it's cut up into like 4 different animations because of how it works. That's not that bad. It's very interesting. Knowing what the states are, how they flow together, is important. That's something that should be conveyed to the asset list. That should something that you and the designer need to know. Now, this is something of a repeat from a previous lecture, but I'm including it because it's very important. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't see that lecture or they did and forgot it. All states are one of the 3 L's. They are a looping animation, like a cycle, a linking animation, something that links 2 cycles together, such as a stand to a crouch. You have the stand-crouch transition. Or they're a linear animation. They play once for a specific action, and then they return to whatever state they came from. Standing idle, we're doing a kick, and we're going back to standing idle. When you're creating the asset list, okay, we're making this animation. What is that animation? It's a transition. We're going from standing to crouching. Cool. I can do that. This is one of those things. For the designers, you have your nouns, verbs, and adjectives. Whenever you have a verb in a sentence describing a mechanic, that's probably a mechanic. That's something else. Or a sentence describing a bit of gameplay, the verb is the mechanic, or whatever it actually kind of is. I can't remember right now. It's late. You also kind of use it to fill in the gaps. So if we are making transitions from something like an idle loop to another idle loop, like, hey, we're knocked down, we're down on the ground, to, hey, we're in idle. This is essentially where we can start and end. And you'll build up a pose library. Now, you can have a specific Maya scene that has this, or you can make a Maya tool that has this, that saves the poses. But this is kind of what you're going to be using. All right, hey, we're going to make a bunch of knockdown animations. All right, we're going to start with the light knockdown. We're going to start with this idle, and we're going to make the first frame and try to make it all kind of work, and then we're going to end on this other pose that we already made. And then we can start to go through it. Little bit of a hack is when you're starting with the animation, you can start like halfway through the action because a lot of the states will blend together in the engine. So you can just get a lot of really good impact off rip. But yeah, you're trying to sell the feel of the action. You're trying to make sure everything works together. That's something that you're doing with all these states. And I kind of talked about with the jumps. Now, when you are creating a specific action, when you're writing out your sentence of a minute of gameplay and you have your verbs, it's like, oh, that's going to be a mechanic. That might not be one animation. That might be several. For example, a jump, something as basic as a jump. The icon of video games, Mario, Jumpman himself. It's actually a very complicated action because you're shifting through multiple states very quickly and multiple looping animations very quickly. So we start with idle and we're going to end with idle. But we start with a sort of jumping animation. It's going to link between a couple of states, rising, in air, and falling. These are all different states. They're all just, hey, we're in air, but what is a variable acting upon us? Are we fighting against gravity? Are we going up? We're going to play our rising in air animation loop. It's kind of neutral or between like a certain range, like, oh, like gravity value of plus and minus 20. It's like, okay, we'll play this sort of neutral I'm in air animation. Oh, we're falling onto the ground. Okay, we're going to play the we're falling looping animation. And we're just going to blend between those until we hit the ground and we play our landing animation. And then we go back to idle. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 animations for one mechanic, just for jumping. Sounds like a lot, but all of these are probably like, I don't know, half a second of animation. They're not that much. Even then, these could be, in your prototype, one pose that you just let the engine handle the interpolation. And it's fine. It works. This is one of those things, your animators and your designers, you need to be talking with each other how this all works. Now, this is one of those things that I'm very invested in as an animator, because one thing that makes me a little mad because I'm an educator is I'm seeing a lot of people who are trying to make a game that they have no reason to make because they're not an animator, or they don't have an animator on their team, or they don't have anyone who's willing to learn animation. And then they try and it doesn't work out. I remember this was a team that was coming to me and they were going to make a Souls-like game. And they're like, hey, we're trying to make a Souls-like and we're having an issue. And I solved the issue for them. It's like, all right, so you're making a Souls-like? I want to talk with your animator because there's a lot of different things about how this is going to work. And then he said to me, it was like half the team. And they said, we don't have an animator. We're using Mixamo. And then I just looked at him and I said, why? And then 3 weeks later, that team was destroyed. It was just dissolved. Game project wasn't getting off the ground. I'm like, I called it. So if you don't have a lot of animation on your team, try to make something that doesn't need a lot of animation. You can still use some of it, but not a lot. There's games that you can make with no animators, games that you can make with one animators, and then a bunch of games that you can make if you have like 3 or 4, if a whole team of them, they're just doing it. Yeah, you can make a lot of cool stuff. But if you don't have that, don't try. I'm not saying don't try as in like, just don't try, you suck. More of like, no, you're going to like bite off way more than you can chew. But here's some examples. Hitman Go is a game that's just a puzzle where you're moving little figurines around to make a sort of stealth segment work. If you have a good character artist and you have some good like VFX artist, you can make that work for you. You don't need an animator. If you have someone who's more 2D than 3D, let's go into, you can make something like Octopath Traveler, where you have all these 2D animations playing in a 3D space. And it looks really, really good. It looks nice. You can do something like that if you need to. Or if you have some people who are animation curious, they're more technically minded and more design minded, you can make something like Octodad, where the entire point is he can't move well. You can make a nice little fun little thing out of that. Play to your strengths. Who do you have? What do you want to do and all that? That might not be what you can do. And you have to know what you can do. All of this also affects your art style. Woo, woo. So a lot of this presentation has been a question of, hey, we're just trying to get animations on screen. All right, cool. What are those animations going to be, though? How are they going to work? it's kind of weird how it's like that's like the last question I'm trying to ask you guys. Yeah, it's a lot because animation pipelines are a lot. Art styles will have a profound impact on your pipeline, and your pipeline will have a profound impact on your art style. We have Mario here. Hey, we have full 3D animation. We want full 3D animation. That is going to be a lot for gameplay. Paper Mario, limited 2D animation. That's going to change the way how the art style works. And you can kind of even say you have like, see, you have a full 3D models versus you have paper cutouts. And it makes it work. It works with what they're trying to do. Mario Wonder has a lot of bouncy, hyper cartoony animation, and it works with all of the art style. There's a lot of pipeline considerations to trying to make this work. If you ever look at Mario Wonder behind the scenes, they have like weird stuff going on with the rigs to make it look as cartoony as possible. So, I love this image. Abstract, stylized, realism. Where does your art style land? Art styles are often discussed through things like color choice and shape language, but that affects what's going to be animated. If you have a very realistic, where are we? Realistic art style, that is going to affect your animation style. You might want to go with motion capture. You really, really might want to do that because everything's going to look like a real person. If everything's looking stylized and you're using motion capture, that's going to be weird. It's going to be very weird. But if everyone looks real and everyone's moving like a cartoon character, also going to look weird. You need to keep everything simpatico, everything working together as to not create this weird clash of art styles. This is something that I have in here. This is the difficulty of the types of games you're going to make and the types of art styles, not just for setup, but for execution. Quadrupeds and squash and stretch, that's going to be very, very difficult. So if you're going to go stylized and you want to make like a little squash and stretch cartoon character, you're going to have to find some sacrifices to make that work because it's very difficult. If you want to make full-on face rigs to make your nice little realistic people, you want someone to start to drool over your character like they are for Asterion here, you're going to have to invest a lot into making a really powerful face rig. If not, you might have to just fool with something like face cards or illustrations like with here. Illustration for Ryu, full model and face rig for Ryu here. One is more difficult than the other. Straight up. Your style and your pipeline will affect the difficulty. Will it work in engine? So this is where I start to pick on the Blender people a lot because there's a lot of stuff that makes really cool stuff in Blender and man, that looks really cool. Hey, can we make it work in engine? It's not gonna work in engine. As soon as you pull it out of Blender, it starts to fall apart. That's not a thing that is wholly aligned to Blender, because that happens in Maya too. This is a Maya face rig for the movie Elemental. That will not work in Unreal. Straight up will not work in Unreal unless you completely make a new pipeline for it. But you have to make sure what you're trying to do will work. Make a little prototype to make sure that the pipeline is well worn. We can get something from start to finish, from Maya or Blender into Unreal or Unity, and then build upon that. I have seen a lot of people fight tooth and nail to make something work with that, and it's like, that could have been time spent making the game better. Time spent making the actual animation better. Sometimes you'll have to throw work out because it's not working. It sucks, but it's a thing that you got to do sometimes. I want to talk about mocap for a little bit. So, motion capture is really good working with humanoid characters and realistic motion. Same thing with Cascadeur. Hey, we can make all this really cool humanoid animation. Can we do a creature? No. What about if we make a cartoon character? No. I love this bit from Sonic the Hedgehog 2016 because everyone moves really weird because they're all doing mocap on these big mascot characters with their giant chunky legs and hands, or thin legs with chunky feet and all that, and like heads the size of their body. It looks weird. It looks bad. It's something called the mascot suit problem. It's just a thing that is you have to kind of alleviate. Not saying you can't use mocap for mascots, because people do. You just have to really build your pipeline and not just do fire and forget. We're going to do mocap. Mocap has the answers. It's a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet. But if you start to really make things work, you can do really cool stuff, like with Monster Hunter, where they're making a full rig in real life in the mocap studio to make it all work. Really like this little bit where it's like, hey, God, I cannot remember the names of these ones. It's Kirin and then something else. Rajang? I think it's Rajang. Yeah, they're having this fight done in motion capture because that would actually be a really, really long time to make, all in hand keyed. 30% of that gone? Oh, that's awesome. That's great. But they're doing things like, hey, they're getting like a chair, an office chair, putting some pillows on it and running it at him. They're putting a thing with a water bottle as he's gonna like tear off the horn. Oh, we need to do stuff to match the proportions of Rajang. All right, we're gonna put him on stilts. It's really cool. You could do stuff like that with motion capture. But if you're just seeing motion capture as the cheap option because it just does the work for the animation 4 hour, no, it's not how it works. Motion capture is cool, but there's a lot of work that you're doing with it. Procedural animation. Procedural animation is really, really cool. But it's also like kind of hard to wrap your head around because it's a full type of workflow, a full pipeline. A couple of people have come to me, it's like, hey, I want to get into procedural animation. How do you do procedural animation? Like, it's a button that you press in Unreal, and that's not how it works. This video is something that I've passed around to a lot of students because it just has a lot of really cool ways to do it. It's essentially allowing certain automated processes that occur in Engine, occur in Maya, occur in Blender, and you're just letting those rock by very finely tuning certain things. So I'm not sure if I can find a specific one, but yeah, here we are. Like, hey, instead of just tweening on curves and just kind of jumping, it's not good. You'll start off with the graph editor curve going smoothly, linearly from one to another. Or you can just tweak and make some more bouncier animation with some other curves. All of that is just generalized tweaking of curves, making it work procedurally, not worrying about the highest fidelity, but it kind of works for them. This video is very, very good. Start looking at procedural animation. Remember talking about hair and cloth and all of that. If you have a dress or you have a cape, let the engine handle it. Make it a physics object. Let it just physics about. That's going to make it better. But if you have an art style where you have like a very distinct waving like cape, that might be a little too much, unless that's all you're doing for that. I think it was Batman Arkham Asylum, they had one guy, and he was just the cape guy. And for a year and a half, all he did was stare at Batman's cape and make it work. Y'all don't have a year and a half and one guy to spare on a cape. Unless you do. This was face rigs. This is another fidelity thing. Proceduralize is one thing that you can do for your art style. Keep fidelity in mind too. Again, this is something that has a lot of knock-on effects for your art style. This is a face rig where it has all these controllers all this specific geometry in the mesh, all these little sliders. Yeah, that's really cool, and you can make a really cool high fidelity animation for that. This would probably take like 3 months to set up. You don't have 3 months. This is face cards, where you have all these faces that are just drawn, and you can just paste them onto the character. This would probably take a week or 2 to set up. And hey, we need to do a new face. Oh, we'll just add a new face to the card. Cool. A lot of 2D rigs. One thing that you can do, even in mocap, hey, we don't want the full-on fingers. 5 fingers is too much. What about mitten hands? We're just going to capture one finger, and that's going to like pull the entirety of the hands. Mittens, that works. That's a lot of joints that you don't have to worry about. Why have like 4 fingers when you can just do 1 on both hands? It's going to make it a lot easier. Fidelity is important. These are the sort of things that if you're going to want to do this for animation and rigging, you have to build your art style around it. More procedural animation stuff. You have things like inverse kinematics or IK. You have someone walking around on rough terrain. I don't want to make animation of walking on rough terrain. I'd rather just have IK do it. You see this a lot. This might be hard to see up here, but this is without IK. Foot is clipping into the ground. With IK, foot is above the ground. You'll also see this with someone, they'll walk along a wall and something will happen procedurally. Well, their hands will just kind of start to glide against the wall, make it look nice and good. That's the sort of procedural animation that we're talking about. You could also use additive poses. This example here, you have a run, and they're just running. And hey, we want like a sort of lean. I don't want to make a leaning run animation. I don't want to make all the animations for all the leans you want. Why don't I make a pose that just adds the lean to it? And you'll just add the lean to all of the animations as they're leaning. It's like, oh, we're going in this direction. All right, add the lean. This is the lean. And it works. Just add it in. Another thing where this works is if you have a bunch of characters with a gun, you'll have someone doing a walk animation. And then you'll have a hold a gun pose. Just add the hold a gun pose onto the walk animations. You have the walking while holding a gun pose, and you don't have to make a new animation. You add a new gun pose. You don't need to make a new animation. All of that, all the way down. Layers, additive animations, blending, cards, cheaper results, proceduralize. You have to define your art style that works with what you can do. Because if I had my way, I had stupid money, I win the lottery, my stocks go to the moon and I have like $1 billion, I'd be making something on par with Elden Ring. I can't do that because I'm one person. Y'all are in the process of learning all your crafts. You're in the process of probably making your first major game that's going to take you a couple months rather than a weekend. You have to know what you want to do. You have to know what you're capable of doing and try to make that work with each other. That's it. So, hopefully that answers some of your questions about your animation pipeline, or probably for the better, you'll know what questions to ask when you are creating your animation pipeline.